Today I want to talk about something that I find genuinely fascinating and also something I recognize in myself, even though I want to be clear right from the start that I have never been formally diagnosed with ADHD. I am not a doctor. I am not a mental health professional. What I am is someone who pays close attention to my own behavior, someone who spends a lot of time researching and thinking, and someone who sometimes looks at certain patterns in how I function and thinks, okay, that is interesting. That is worth understanding better. So today we are talking about INFJ and ADHD. And before anyone worries, this is not me diagnosing anyone, including myself. This is just an exploration, a learning conversation. If anything I say today makes you want to look deeper into your own experience, I would always encourage you to do that with a real professional, not just a YouTube video. Now, let me explain what ADHD actually is, for anyone who is not fully familiar with it. ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Despite the name, it is not really about having no attention. It is more about having inconsistent attention, where a person struggles to focus on things that feel boring or unstimulating, but can become intensely locked into things that genuinely interest them. The brain essentially has difficulty regulating when and where to direct its focus. There are different presentations of ADHD. Some people are more hyperactive and impulsive. Some are more inattentive and dreamy. And some have a mix of both. It is also worth knowing that ADHD looks different in different people, and it is often underdiagnosed, particularly in adults, and particularly in people who are high-functioning enough to have developed their own coping strategies over the years without ever realizing that is what they were doing. Now, why would INFJ and ADHD even be in the same conversation? Let me explain. INFJs are naturally deep thinkers. Their minds are almost always processing something, making connections between ideas, going back over past conversations, imagining future scenarios, analyzing patterns in human behavior. On the outside, they can appear calm or even quiet, but internally, there is usually a lot happening. That constant interactivity can sometimes look like distraction, even when it is actually a form of very focused internal processing. And that is where the lines between the two can start to blur. One of the most interesting overlaps is something called hyperfocus. In ADHD, hyperfocus is when a person becomes so deeply absorbed in something that they lose all sense of time. They forget to eat. They do not notice hours passing. They are completely locked in. And here is the thing. INFJs experience something very similar, not always from ADHD, but from the way their intuition and interest work together. When something genuinely captures an INFJ, they go deep. They do not skim. They research, they think, they explore every angle. They can spend hours on a single topic without feeling like they have wasted time at all. I notice this in myself constantly. Right now, I am in one of those phases with this channel. I have been making a lot of videos recently, and some people watching might wonder if it is just automated content being pushed out without much thought behind it. But it is not. It is me, genuinely absorbed in the process of learning, scripting, researching, and improving. I lose track of time doing it. I get so locked into the creative and intellectual process that other things, sometimes including meals and sleep, have to remind me they exist. That is hyperfocus. And whether it comes from ADHD or just from how this personality type operates when it is genuinely interested in something, the experience feels the same from the inside. But here is where the difference matters. In ADHD, that hyperfocus is often involuntary and inconsistent. It lands on things randomly, not always the things that are actually important or that need attention. And when ADHD is present alongside an INFJ personality type, you get a combination that can be genuinely challenging to live with. The sensitivity, the deep thinking, the strong internal compass of the INFJ runs alongside a brain that has difficulty with executive function, which is the practical side of getting things done, staying organized, managing time, and following through on tasks that feel dull or routine.
Let me break that down.
Executive function is basically the part of your brain that acts like a personal manager. It helps you plan, prioritize, start tasks, switch between them, and finish them. People with ADHD often struggle in this area, not because they are lazy or unmotivated, but because their brain genuinely has difficulty with those regulatory functions. And for an INFJ, who is already more oriented toward ideas and meaning than toward practical logistics, adding ADHD into the mix can make the everyday management of life feel genuinely overwhelming. They might have a brilliant vision for something, but struggle to break it down into steps. They might start multiple projects with genuine enthusiasm and then find it nearly impossible to return to them once the initial spark has faded. They might be deeply perceptive about other people while completely losing track of their own schedule or responsibilities. They might function beautifully in creative or exploratory modes and then hit a wall the moment something routine or administrative is required. This combination can also affect relationships in specific ways. INFJs already tend to have a complicated relationship with social energy, needing significant time alone to recharge after interactions. Add ADHD to that, and you also get the impulsivity that can sometimes show up in conversation, saying something before fully thinking it through, interrupting unintentionally, or going off on a tangent mid-conversation and forgetting the original point entirely. That can create friction, especially because the INFJ part of the person is simultaneously very aware of how they affect others and very concerned about getting it right. The internal conflict between those two things, the awareness and the impulsivity, can be exhausting. There is also the emotional side of ADHD that does not always get discussed enough. Many people with ADHD experience something called emotional dysregulation, which means their emotional responses can be intense, quick, and sometimes difficult to manage in the moment. For an INFJ, who already feels things deeply and absorbs the emotions of people around them, this layer adds another level of intensity to an already sensitive system. Small frustrations can feel bigger than they are. Criticism can land harder. Rejection, even minor or perceived rejection, can trigger a response that feels completely disproportionate from the outside, but is absolutely real from the inside. There is actually a term some researchers and clinicians use for this in the context of ADHD called rejection-sensitive dysphoria. It describes an intense emotional pain triggered by the feeling of being rejected, criticized, or failing to meet a personal or external expectation. INFJs, even without ADHD, tend to be sensitive to these things. With ADHD in the picture, that sensitivity can become even more acute. Now let me talk about the strengths, because I do not want this to sound like a list of problems without any acknowledgement of what this combination can also produce. When an INFJ with ADHD finds something that truly matters to them, the output can be remarkable. The depth of the INFJ thinking, combined with the hyperfocus capacity that ADHD can bring, creates a person who can go incredibly deep into a subject and produce insights or work that genuinely stands out. They are often highly creative, able to make connections between ideas that other people miss. They tend to be empathetic and perceptive in ways that make them exceptional at understanding people. They often have a strong drive to contribute something meaningful, and when their environment supports that drive rather than working against it, they can do genuinely impressive things. They are also often highly adaptable in ways that are not immediately obvious. Because they have spent most of their lives having to work around their own brain, finding alternative routes to get things done, learning what environments help them function, and which ones destroy their focus, they develop a kind of resourcefulness and self-awareness that many people never need to build. That self-knowledge, when it is actually developed and used, is a real asset. So what helps? What actually makes things more manageable for someone navigating both of these things at once? Structure helps, even when the brain resists it. Not rigid, punishing structure, but gentle, flexible systems that reduce the number of decisions that need to be made in real time. A loose daily routine. A simple way of keeping track of what needs to happen. Reminders that do not feel like punishment. The goal is to reduce the cognitive load of managing everyday life so that more energy is available for the things that actually engage the brain. Working in alignment with interest rather than against it is also important. Fighting the brain constantly, trying to force focus onto things that feel completely unstimulating, is a losing battle in the long run. Where possible, finding ways to connect tasks to something that feels meaningful makes a significant difference. Even something small, like understanding why a boring task matters in the bigger picture, can provide enough of a hook to make it possible. Managing the social and emotional load carefully is something I genuinely think about in my own life. Knowing when I am running low on capacity, recognizing the signs before I hit a wall, and giving myself actual recovery time rather than pushing through until I crash, these are not optional. They are necessary. And treating them as necessary rather than indulgent is an important shift in mindset. And finally, being honest about what is actually happening rather than masking it. Masking is a term used to describe when someone hides their struggles and presents a functional face to the world, even when things are genuinely hard internally. Many people who are later diagnosed with ADHD as adults spent decades masking, pushing through, compensating, and performing normalcy in ways that took enormous energy. Allowing yourself to acknowledge your actual experience, to yourself at least, is the beginning of being able to actually address it rather than just manage the appearance of it. I want to close with something that I think matters. Whether you have a formal diagnosis or not, whether you identify with what I have described here or only with parts of it, please do not use any label, whether it is a personality type or a clinical term, as the whole story of who you are. These frameworks are useful. They can help you understand yourself better, communicate your needs more clearly, and feel less alone in your experience. But they're not ceilings. They are starting points. And before I wrap up, I want to ask you something because I genuinely want to hear from you in the comments. Do you identify as an INFJ, or do you just feel like you share some of these traits? And have you ever experienced that intense hyperfocus state where you are so locked into something that the rest of the world disappears for a while? What was it about? And did it feel like a strength or a struggle in that moment? I would love to know. Drop it in the comments, because these kinds of conversations are exactly why I started this channel. Thanks for watching. If this video resonated with you, please consider hitting the subscribe button. I am currently working toward my goal of 1,000 subscribers so I can finally monetize this channel and turn this passion into a sustainable part of my future. This is my unfiltered diary of solo living in the Philippines, and your support helps me keep this channel growing. If you would like to help out even more, you can check out the Buy a Treat for My Pets link in the description. My dogs definitely appreciate the love. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the next update. Thank you for being such an important part of this journey. I will see you in the next one.